At what point does the brand step in and go, right, we're opening a lawsuit against you because of you've said that this brand fits this car and we're pricing it differently? Like, at what point does that happen? We don't know.
There is a moment in every creator's journey where the industry they love most reveals exactly how it sees them. Not through words, but through silence. For Mat Armstrong, that moment didn't come once. It came repeatedly, stretched across years of work, millions in investment, and tens of millions of views generated for brands that never once looked back. And then, without warning, something changed, and it didn't come from the direction anyone expected. To understand the full weight of what just happened, you have to step back and look at the landscape that Mat Armstrong has been operating in. Because this story isn't just about a YouTuber getting a package in the post. It's about a collision between two very different philosophies of how the automotive world works, and which one is winning. Mat Armstrong didn't stumble into automotive content. He carved a lane that didn't exist before him. While most automotive creators were chasing track days and first drives, Mat went in a completely different direction. He started buying wrecked hypercars, not to flip them quickly, not for show, but to genuinely restore them from destruction, on camera, with real parts, real expertise, and real money on the line. The scale of what he has accomplished is hard to fully appreciate unless you've followed the journey from the beginning. He acquired a crashed Lamborghini Reventon, a car so rare that only 21 examples were ever manufactured, making it one of the most exclusive production Lamborghinis ever built. He didn't display it. He didn't park it in a glass cabinet and film walkarounds. He sourced genuine factory components at enormous personal cost, he documented every stage of the restoration process in detail, and he brought millions of viewers with him through the entire experience. That project alone represented a level of investment and commitment that most professional garages would have declined entirely. Then came the Aventador restoration. Then the Ferrari 296 GTB, a hybrid hypercar sitting at the absolute frontier of what Ferrari's road car division currently produces. A machine so complex that even Ferrari-authorized technicians have reportedly found themselves challenged by its systems. Mat took that car on camera, with transparency, with genuine skill, and with an audience watching every step. At the time of the Koenigsegg story breaking, his subscriber count had crossed 5 million, an audience that isn't passive or casual. These are people who genuinely understand what they're watching. What he built, in other words, is not just a YouTube channel. It is one of the most effective showcases for supercar engineering that exists anywhere in media today. The brands being restored on his channel received something that no amount of advertising spend can manufacture. Authentic enthusiasm, from a real human being who genuinely loves the machines, communicated to an audience that genuinely cares. And the response from those brands? Complete and total silence. No collaboration offer. No acknowledgement on social media. No access to the factory, no parts discount, no invitation to an event. Nothing. For years, Mat Armstrong poured significant personal resources into celebrating and preserving these brands' engineering heritage, and received precisely nothing in return from the manufacturers themselves. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it's not simply an oversight. It is a deliberate posture. The Italian supercar houses, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and brands of their tier, have spent decades constructing an image built around mystique, exclusivity, and carefully controlled access. Their brand identity is inseparable from the sense that their cars exist on a different plane from ordinary experience. Seeing a Lamborghini dismantled bolt by bolt in a YouTube workshop, however expertly, conflicts with the image those brands have spent enormous resources protecting. From their perspective, the logic is consistent, even if it feels cold from the outside. They don't need Mat Armstrong. They have waiting lists. They have Hollywood partnerships and Formula One associations and decades of brand equity that sells cars to people who would never watch a restoration video in their life. The idea of acknowledging an independent creator who strips their products down on camera isn't just unappealing to them, it's potentially threatening to the mythology they depend on. Mat, for his part, never made a public campaign of the situation. He didn't post bitter commentary about being ignored. He kept building. That restraint, as it turns out, would matter later. Into this already tense backdrop came the Bugatti situation, a story that spread rapidly through the automotive creator community and landed hard. Bugatti, as a brand, operates with a level of gatekeeping that goes beyond most manufacturers. They are known to exercise influence over who can own their cars, who is permitted to service them, and in some documented cases, who is allowed to purchase them on the secondary market. The brand has what amounts to a philosophical ownership over its products even after sale, a position that makes a certain kind of sense from a legacy luxury perspective, but which sits uncomfortably in an era where individual creators have built genuine audiences around those same products. The specific details of the drama that unfolded varied in the telling, but the core narrative was consistent and recognizable. A high-profile content creator with a passionate, engaged audience was effectively sidelined by brand decision-making that had nothing to do with their merit or their audience's interest. The message it sent to the creator community was blunt. Certain legacy brands view independent voices not as partners or ambassadors, but as elements to be managed or excluded when they don't fit neatly into the official brand narrative. For Mat Armstrong, this wasn't abstract. He had been living a quiet version of this same story for years. The Bugatti drama simply gave it a name, a public shape, and a moment for the broader community to recognize what many individual creators had already experienced privately. It was in this atmosphere, with this specific tension hanging over the automotive creator world, that a package arrived at Mat Armstrong's workshop from a small factory in the south of Sweden. Ängelholm is not a city that most people in the automotive world could place on a map without help. It sits in the Skåne region of southern Sweden, and its most notable feature, for the purposes of this story, is that it is home to one of the most extraordinary manufacturing operations in the history of the automobile. The Koenigsegg factory occupies a converted military airbase, and within it, a small workforce of highly skilled engineers and craftspeople hand-assemble somewhere between 20 and 35 cars per year, placing Koenigsegg in a category of exclusivity that even Ferrari and Lamborghini cannot match on a per-unit basis. The package that arrived for Mat Armstrong came from this facility. It contained branded merchandise, high-quality hoodies, t-shirts, and items that aren't available in any retail environment because Koenigsegg doesn't operate conventional retail channels. This is not the kind of gear you find on a brand's website. It's the kind of thing that finds its way into the hands of clients who have just spent £2 million on a hypercar. But the merchandise, striking as it was, wasn't the part of the package that stopped people in their tracks. Inside was a handwritten note. Not a press release. Not a form letter with a signature printed at the bottom. A handwritten note, addressed specifically to Mat, asking him to watch particular videos. Specific ones. Which meant that before that note was written, someone inside the Koenigsegg factory had already been watching Mat's channel, closely enough to identify content they wanted him to engage with in return. That single detail transformed the gesture entirely. This was not a PR intern working through a list of automotive creators with large subscriber counts. This was a targeted, deliberate, personalized outreach from one of the most selective manufacturers on Earth, at a moment in the creator world's relationship with the automotive industry that made it impossible to interpret as coincidence. To understand the move fully, you have to understand the company that made it. Christian von Koenigsegg founded his business in 1994 at the age of 22, with no inherited automotive backing and no formal engineering credentials. What he did have was an obsessive belief that a small, independent organization could out-engineer the establishment if it was willing to think completely differently about every problem it encountered. That philosophy has produced results that are, by any objective measure, extraordinary. Koenigsegg doesn't just build fast cars, they invent the technology that makes those cars possible. Their free-valve system eliminates the traditional camshaft from the engine entirely, representing a fundamental rethinking of internal combustion architecture. Their light-speed transmission is the fastest shifting gearbox ever put into a production vehicle. The Jesko Absolut has a theoretical top speed that no road car has approached in actual testing. These are not marginal improvements on existing ideas. They are genuine engineering breakthroughs from a company that most of the automotive establishment would have dismissed as too small to matter. And Christian von Koenigsegg himself does something that virtually no other CEO of a luxury automotive brand does consistently. He explains the engineering publicly. He sits in front of cameras. He appears on technical podcasts. He talks about tolerances and thermodynamics and manufacturing processes with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely cannot stop being fascinated by the work. He is, in terms of his public persona, the living embodiment of the philosophy that understanding something deeply makes it more impressive, not less. When you place that philosophy next to Mat Armstrong's channel, a platform built entirely on the premise that understanding how a hypercar is engineered makes you love it more, not less, the connection is so obvious it almost feels inevitable in retrospect. Koenigsegg's ideal audience isn't people who are impressed by a car's price tag. It's people who want to understand what makes it extraordinary. That is, almost precisely, the the 5 million strong community that Mat has spent years cultivating. The timing, landing as it did in the wake of the Bugatti drama, amplified everything. Koenigsegg didn't just send a package. They sent a signal, at a moment when the automotive creator community was asking, out loud, whether any manufacturer actually values what independent creators do. The answer that came back from Angel Home was clear, considered, and cost almost nothing to deliver. There is a broader conversation happening in the automotive industry that this story sits inside, and it's worth naming directly. The traditional gatekeepers of how cars are understood and celebrated, the manufacturers, the heritage publications, the official press programs, are no longer the primary shapers of public enthusiasm for these products. They haven't been for several years, and the gap is widening. YouTube channels with technical depth and authentic voices now reach audiences that dwarf the readership of most established automotive publications. Those audiences are not passive. They make purchasing decisions, they influence the people around them, and they carry genuine brand loyalty, or brand skepticism, into the real world. A creator with 5 million technically engaged subscribers is not a niche curiosity. They are a significant cultural force in the market that these brands are trying to reach. The brands that understand this early are gaining ground that will be very difficult to cede later. The brands that continue to treat independent creators as peripheral, or worse, as threats to be managed, are making a strategic error that will compound over time. The Bugatti situation illustrated the cost of that posture. The Koenigsegg gesture illustrated the alternative. What makes the comparison particularly striking is the asymmetry of resources involved. Lamborghini and Ferrari have combined marketing budgets that run into hundreds of millions of euros. They employ entire departments dedicated to brand communications, influencer relations, and digital strategy. Koenigsegg, by contrast, operates with a communications team that is tiny by any measure. And yet it was Koenigsegg, spending what amounted to the cost of a few garments and a note card, that generated more authentic brand conversation and community engagement than anything the larger brands have produced in the same period. The return on that investment is not just good. It is, by any reasonable metric, extraordinary.